Recording in progress.
One, yeah.
By the way.
Yeah.
I wanted to say it.
Thank you.
Recording in
Just
progress.
because I couldn't hear.
Yeah, well.
Oh, the guest has a question.
Yes.
Before we start, or are we already started?
We've already started, but hold on.
One. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the writers class.
Yep, absolutely. Because
he's a writer. The guest is a writer.
Yeah, yeah. Imagine that. Imagine that. I'm Jade.
And I have a Jade here today.
I know, y'all. I'm sorry. I've been busy trying to make, us great.
Okay. Jade started a new business. So she's making a lot of things great. I don't know if it's a us thing. No, I'm joking. It's us. I get part of that profit.
All the things great. But anyway, we wrote books, and I thought divorce was bad with other life lessons, and I thought being grown up was easy. If only I would meet Memoir and Voice. I'm Winona. Anytime you want.
Widow's Dead, Widow's Web, and Foreign Coffee, and you can get those books wherever audiobooks are sold. And by the way, that is 6 or
That's
7.
a lot. It's a lot.
I think it's 6, but it might have been 7 books. I don't know. Normally I count them off, but like she did it. So
today, no.
I blame you.
Oh, wow. So I'm back and now you're blaming me. I feel like that's what she wanted me back for, y'all. But y'all aren't here to hear about us.
You're not. You can find out the rest of our books, by the way, at www.andithoughtLadies.com. You're not here to hear about us. You're here to hear about our wonderful guests.
Wonderful guests. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Tom Lutz from the Dordogne in France.
Oh, he got to say from the Dordogne in France.
Like, I'm so
I don't know if you guys remember this, but he was on a while ago, and he was in America.
Yeah.
I was an American.
Yeah.
I am an American.
You are an American.
I am an American. I'm an American in France. I may become French at some point.
Okay.
But who knows?
And also fluent in French?
Je peux parler comme un touriste américain.
See, there we go.
I can speak like an American
More
tourist.
than I know.
Yeah, it's
I'm an American tourist.
It gets better every day. I find myself, I'm starting to think in French, and I have some French friends, and they all can speak English. So that helps, but it's not fair to force them to speak. So I try to speak French when I'm with them as much as I can. And of course, just going around town and buying groceries and going to the hardware store, it's you have to have some French.
So that immersion thing works.
Apparently,
yes.
Immerse yourself. And
I was just at the grocery store the other day thinking about in a couple of weeks we'll be doing this in German, and I was like, dang it, I'm gonna get lost in the grocery store again.
Google, what does this mean?
Anymore.
And if you're an adventurous eater, it's okay. You just buy it and figure out what it is when you get home.
True.
Yeah.
It didn't turn out so well for us the last time, but it's okay. It's all right.
I thought I was getting a hamburger with something completely different.
It was something, but hey, we lived with it. It was good. We lived with it. So what motivated you to move to France? I mean, I have to from LA.
I don't know if you've noticed, but our country is it's going a little nutty. And my wife is as a historian of the, well, she's not a historian, she's a writer and a theater critic and journalist, but she's writing a book about Hitler right now. And she's also Jewish, and she thinks that, if a lot of Jews in Europe had watched what was happening with Hitler in the way we're watching what's happening with Trump, they would have gotten out a little bit sooner. So that's not the real reason. The real reason is we just wanted a new chapter in our lives, but we don't mind missing.
Why not, right?
Exactly.
If you can, why not? I agree with
who doesn't go, you know what? France sounds cool.
Right. Like even just to say I've done it for like 3 months. I've done it for 3 months. Okay. And I missed a man, I gave back, whatever. But to do it is awesome. So as you are a writer also, any good books coming down from this new adventure, new chapter in your life?
I have invented a new chapter in my life. I finished 2 books they're both coming. The one I was hoping was going to come out this fall because it's a literary encyclopedia of the year 1925.
Mm.
So yeah, it's a very strange book. It's 1,000 pages. It's a monster of a book. And every chapter is like an encyclopedia entry. So there's one about Ahmed Abdullah, who was a famous writer in 1925 that none of us have ever heard of, right? You've never heard of Ahmed Abdullah. Nobody's ever heard of Ahmed Abdullah. He's like completely forgotten. But at the time, he was big news. He had plays on Broadway. He had plays on the West End in London. He had a whole story about how he was descended from the Russian Tsar on one side and from Afghan princess on the other side. It's apparently all made up, but when he gave interviews like this, I've been thinking maybe I should tell you that I'm descended from.
And we believe you. We'll be like, okay, ancestry.com, obviously.
So and it just goes through like that. And a lot of it is literary stuff, and the people that you would expect, Hemingway and Fitzgerald and Gertrude Stein and all of the people from the 20s that are the canon. But it's the year that L.N. Locke published The New Negro, which was the book that kind of put the Harlem Renaissance on the national map. It's the year that Josephine Baker moved to France. And
Please tell me you were doing the same thing Josephine Baker did.
I'm living about 15 minutes from where she moved.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
She bought a castle that's, just right in this same area, for the same reason, because it's beautiful and the food is great. But and that's where she raised her family of, she adopted 13 kids and had this whole, right. So it's and the castle is amazing. You can visit it. It's a museum to her and her life. And she was, while she was here, she joined the French resistance and was a spy for the French. And all that's a little after 1925. But anyway, it was such a blast to write this book and just follow the stories of Ahmed Abdullah and Josephine Baker and Gertrude Stein and all, who else, of course, was living in France at the time. But and then there's a chapter on plastic, because plastic was kind of the word plastics entered the English language in 1925, and it was a magazine for the plastic industry that was launched in 1925, and they called itself Plastics. Anyway, so it's and television was invented, and the Grand Ole Opry started in Nashville, and just kind of on and on and on. So it's a really interesting book. I loved writing it. I did nothing else for 2 years. I just would get up in the morning and add an entry about something and just go down rabbit hole after rabbit hole and read, I read.
Who doesn't want to go down the rabbit hole? We all want to go down the rabbit hole.
Right? What's better?
It's just like, I want to go down this rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I think that's what writing really is. It's just self-education.
I do not.
And then we get to organize our education in a way that's entertaining.
And
yes.
Write down the voices in our head.
Yeah, and then write down the
yeah.
And put them into different voices. But I think that's one of the favorite parts about writing. Everyone's like, oh, the research, or some people absolutely hate the research, but research is so much easier now. So
yes,
holes are fun.
Yeah.
So now rabbit holes are absolutely wonderful. So we have asked about your future and your new chapter. I want to ask about your legacy because, well, I'm older now, so I get stuck in the past.
You can't tell me you're older. I'm not. Look at this.
But you have done this historical book. You've done a lot of books that are very well based in fact and well presented. So
Thank you.
You're continuing your legacy that way. But you also started LARB and put us onto the fact that there's a literary scene in LA. How How did you feel leaving that huge legacy to be like, I'm going to France, y'all?
Yeah, I always knew that I was going to pass it off to the next generation at some point. And, I thought from the start, I was thinking 10 years. I would let it go. When I was starting it, I was looking at all the other magazines and the New York Review of Books, the editor was Robert Silver forever. And the average age of the readers of the New York Review of Books when we started LARB was 67. The average age.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because they have to tell these things for their advertisers, right? They have to give the data about the readership. So, and I thought, well, of course it is, because a lot of his readers started with him when he started it, and they kind of just followed him. And so and it was always his vision of what the magazine should be. And so his kind of cohort just traveled with him. Whoops.
Oh, okay. That sounds, I'm sorry. That's
Just a little glitch there. Yeah.
Yeah, little glitch.
No problem.
So now let's go visit the contractor who's out the door.
Oh, I was afraid that was going to happen to me because this kitchen job is in the middle of everything. But
yeah,
no problem.
Fun. Anyway, so you were passing it off.
Should I wait? Just keep going. So I thought, well, that's not what I want this to be. I don't want LARB to be my vision. I want this to be the literary community's place to meet and talk, and I wanted it to remain relevant and of its time. And the only way to do that is to step away and let the next generation take over.
Well, now that you have stepped away, there is no better eyes to look at things than someone who's either stepped away or can look behind them. So what do you think of the American writing landscape right now?
The American writing landscape is in flux. Obviously, it's always in flux. I mean, one of the nice things about being a historian is that you just see that a lot of things happen over and over again. In 1925, everything was changing. Modernism had thrown all of the literary values up in the air, and people were rethinking everything. We're in a time like that now as well. It's never been easier to get a book published than it is now. It's never been harder to get a book noticed
as it is now.
Right? Yeah,
absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
So that's very interesting, and it means that there's this amazing fecundity. People are writing poetry. There's poetry slams in every city and every little town in America. It's an amazing time of creativity, and most people don't know most of what's happening because it doesn't come past us, right? And so it's not clear to me, and it won't be clear to anyone, what the great creative minds of our day will turn out to have been 100 years from now.
That is very true.
I am very interested.
I'm always interested in that.
No, I firmly believe that I am one of them.
Yeah. I have always thought that. Yes.
I think it's literally like only one work that we've ever done that I think.
And it was really funny.
But other than that,
actually, okay, so I'm gonna brag just a little bit. So it was someone that actually read our book, it was like the first one, and they said, "Man, this is gonna be so underrated for like 50 years." And they're like, "So I hope you live long enough for you to get the you absolutely deserve." Then he's like, "Cause you deserve it, but no one's gonna get it."
That's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. It really is.
I wasn't being a narcissist. I was just following some other person's face.
And they were like, "Well, it's very great because your children and your children's children will reap the benefits of all this hard work that you're doing." And I was like, but I want to be able to choose some soft food too. You know, I'm still gonna be alive 50 years from now. Just give me my soft food or give me my dishes. Which way? Doesn't matter. I'm like finally getting my life.
Yeah, 50 years down the road doesn't help that much.
It doesn't, but I said that's okay. I mean, from that moment on, I started being heart healthy. I was like, no, see, I'm gonna live to see the greatness. I might forget it. I might have dementia at that time, but I'm gonna live to say it. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That is a
So,
very
you know, along these lines, in Ernest Hemingway's first book in 1925, nobody, this little coterie of people around Gertrude Stein and her friends, they noticed it. It was published by a press in Paris that nobody had ever heard of, just a rich guy that decided to start publishing some people, rich kid, you know, who published some of his friends. And Gertrude Stein's Making of Americans was published in 25, and nobody reviewed it. Nobody, right? It was not in the New York Times. It was not in the Atlantic. And by the way, in 1925, there were book reviews everywhere. There were like a mid-list novel, again, one of these novels that we've never heard of, got 20 reviews around the country and across the ocean. And yeah,
to do some looking up into 1925. I need your book to hurry up and come out so I can
yeah,
read it.
okay. I'll send you a copy as soon as it arrives.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. I've thoroughly enjoyed the education and the time warp, the time jump back to the 25s. I feel like
this is what we love interviewing him. Because if you just always up, you're like, wow. Yep. I never would have thought of that. I'm so glad you mentioned it.
Thanks, but I didn't answer your question that well, right? About what the American literary scene right now.
No, good enough. It's good enough. I feel like we're in a 1920 style Renaissance. Now, if you have more to say about it, I am definitely all ears to hear about it.
Yeah, I think that it's that publishers, because of Amazon, right, and because of the kind of economics of publishing now, Amazon squeezed all of the margins so hard that, you know, publishers have a tough time, authors have the hardest time, agents have a tough time, you know, publicists have a good time because everybody's trying to get noticed, and so publicists are doing better than anybody else, you know, in relation to this moment. And but I don't think it's a particularly sustainable model. You know, it's not, and so we have to figure out what we're going to do about that. And you know, in France, they make, if you buy your book from Amazon, they make you pay a fee, an extra fee, so that it doesn't undercut the bookstores. And so there are still bookstores, right? So they're not letting Amazon destroy the bookstore economy and things like that. And of course, the French government is a culture government. I don't know if you watched the Olympics opening ceremony.
So much.
No, I didn't see the. I've seen different pieces, but not.
Yeah, well, it went on for hours and hours and hours, and partly because they had stuff about books. They had stuff about French women who had made a change in their society. They had like cultural history moments. They had, you know, a whole thing about fraternity, about brotherhood, about sisterhood, about equality, liberty, difference, you know, sexual variety. It was like it was like all about culture, about the way we live, about right. And it's because the French actually find that important, not just, you know, kind of stories of heroic athletes who beat cancer and got back in. Not that that's not a good thing, it's a great thing, but you know, they really respect culture. They really like the fact that they try to do what they have to do to keep their literary culture vibrant. It's a communal, state-based effort. We have the National Endowment for the Arts. It gets its funds cut a little bit more every year, and by Congress, right? So, so we're going in the wrong direction as a country to help fix
Arts.
the
The,
problem.
the
we have
arts
in literacy
and to
and the
get
artists.
everyone out there. Now, I mean, then that's why publicists are having such a great time, right? Because now everyone has to like try to yell and be like, the arts are important, people. The arts are important. Like, I wrote this book and it's actually an important book. Like, I'm saying,
Mhm.
like, that's where you have to be a little loud sometimes.
Recently,
Yes, right. Yeah, of course.
recently
That
I was reading
that
an
helps.
about the movies, about the studio system,
Uh-huh.
why we don't have movie stars anymore. And as I was reading it, all I could think about is, doesn't publishing still do that? They're like, they'd have to find a star, nurture a star, like make a star, and then
Yeah.
it's bankable. And then you get to bank on the star. And I was like, well, publishing finds an author, nurtures an author, publishes an author. And
Yes.
cross the finger that they're bankable.
Yes.
And so
there's
like Hollywood is like, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. Like you're bankable, you're not. Like
yeah,
Hollywood or not.
Hollywood tried this a number of different times, right? There, like in the 60s and 70s, there was an independent movie business, and then the studios kind of gobble up the independents, and then the studios make blockbuster stuff, and nobody likes it, and so they there's a new independent movie movement, and then and it's just like it goes in cycles, and the in a way that's what we have in literature. We have the independent book movement. It's happening.
Yeah.
It's and the publishers, because when I'm sorry, but in 1925, I'm going to just keep going back to 1925.
And I am
You have
so excited.
You have an encyclopedia of
Right,
knowledge.
of
I actually
and I'm here for it.
Okay, so in 1925, Alfred A. Knopf and Blanche Knopf started Knopf, right? Well, they started it a year or two earlier, but right, it's they were publishing stuff that the big publishers, because they had all gobbled up other publishers. So Doubleday became Doubleday Page, then Doubleday Page World, then Doubleday. It's just like got bigger and bigger and bigger, and lost. Became a corporation, a big corporation that had corporate motives. And Blanche and Alfred Knopf and Boney and Liveright and some of these other small publishers, they had a real love of literature. They were into the right. And so when Carl Van Vechten brings Langston Hughes's manuscript to Alfred Knopf, he decides, Van Vechten hears him read his poem at a dinner, goes to Alfred Knopf the next day, and Knopf sends Langston Hughes a contract that same day for his first book, right? That's because it was a guy who saw what he saw, liked what he said, did it, right? He didn't calculate how much am I going to make from this book of poetry. He just did it, right? He published good stuff, and then they published enough stuff to keep in business and lost money on most of their books. And that was what all of these small, individually run publishers were into doing, in the same way that was what the small publishers are doing now, right? And it's just that now Knopf has become a big publisher, and Farrar Straus has become a big publisher. But back then, they were tiny, and they were run by individual people, and they didn't have a corporate mentality, and they didn't have to make money for their shareholders on top of the, right? Because they were individually owned. So that, we're back in that time, but the distribution system, which is now 95% Ingram, is what kind of is another bottleneck for books getting recognized. So it's a great time artistically.
It is. I mean, it's a great time artistically for music, for independent film. I mean, you can make a movie with an iPhone.
Yep, exactly.
There's so much video.
Or Android.
Sorry, with your phone. With your phone.
There you go. You can make it with either one, and you
I'm
can.
doing it because we did it with an iPhone.
We did, but you can also have a book, and I think a lot of people write a book a lot of people that weren't gonna ever get hurt are now getting a little bit hurt. Or at least they have good stuff out there for someone to find, or they're pushing it, which is always a good thing. But apparently it's parallel to 1925. I cannot wait to read this book now. Like, I'm super excited.
So if you wanted to know how the year 1925 ended for the arts, you could either do the research or just wait for Mr. Lutz's book.
Exactly.
So where can people find out more about you, follow all the great things and your legacy that you have left behind? How can we find out more about you?
I'm Tom Lutz, writer, TomLutzWriter.com is the easy.
I love that. That was so concise.
It was so easy.
I think he's making it so concise because it's coming up real close to red wine time.
Probably. It's only gonna hurry up and get up because we will never.
Yeah, it's actually past red wine time, but I held up for you.
Thank you so much. So I'm gonna just wrap this up quickly. So you can find out everything your ladies are doing on www.andithoughtLadies.com. While you're there, go to the middle of the page and see the charities that we proudly support. We will thank you in advance for that. And just remember, y'all, wisdom is all around you if
you're open to finding it and accepting it. It's a peace and love, you guys, from Will
and Jade. Bye bye.